Hey, everybody, and welcome to a conversation with the one-armed madman, Nick from Too Hard for the Radio. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
What's up, Bob? It's always a pleasure talking with you.
I looked down. I looked down and didn't realize you put that on your little title there.
I didn't either, actually. Like I said, I had StreamYard a long time ago, so whatever I loaded onto it when I started the podcast is what's on there now.
Okay, that's funny. Cause I just noticed it as I was doing my spiel here.
In the beginning, I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to, have my name out there or not. And then I realized I'd already been on a couple big podcasts with my name, and there was no point.
There you go. Well, well, I'll just call you Nick, and then we'll keep it simple. How's that?
Yeah.
So I've been on Nick's show, Too Hard for the Radio, a few times, and so fair is fair, right? So
yeah.
I said, hey, why don't you come over and talk to me over here, and this will be on Static Radio. So
I just noticed that both of our podcasts have radio.
Yeah, well, probably because we're older.
I guess, right?
I hate to say it.
Mine is actually based on a local rapper song called Too Hard for the Fucking Radio. Sorry if I wasn't supposed to swear. I should have asked before I did that.
Swear all you want.
Okay, good. But yeah, he had a really popular song in the 90s called Too Hard for the Fucking Radio. And it was interesting because he was like a gangster rapper and he got no airtime at all. Like they just would not put him on the radio. So that was kind of his deal, was I'm too hard for the radio. And it's a perfect, like, I like it because there's so many different layers to it, right? Like it's a great name for a podcast because it's like what we're saying on this, you could never say on the radio, which is absolutely true. And, he was dealing with censorship in the same way that we are today. It was just a whole lot harder for him to get out the message than it is for us.
Interesting. See, that's an interesting tidbit. I didn't know about that. Yeah. Unfortunately, mine says radio because that's where we started at. I started on college radio.
Cool.
And so, I basically did a variant. Miles and I did a variant of the show on college radio, and that's where all of it took off from. So, whenever we come up with a name, we just called it Static Radio, because there's no way in the world we're going to get static.com, but we could get Static Radio.
Yeah.
So.
and mine was the same thing. Like there's no way I could ever get Too Hard for the Radio because it's a popular song. Right. But also if you're searching for Mac Dre's Too Hard for the Radio on YouTube, every once in a while the podcast comes up. So
you get a little cross reference there.
Yeah. It's like a cross promotion. Hey.
That's cool.
And I would like to think he was shot and killed a long time ago, but I would like to think that he would approve of the show.
Well, so was it one of those East Coast, West Coast things that took him?
I don't know exactly. Nobody knows exactly what. Yeah, I mean, these guys were gangsters. So this was actual gangster rap. These guys were not messing around. It wasn't like these, Diddy and these guys. They aren't actual gangsters. They just kind of.
Well, now he is kind of a gangster in a way.
Yeah, he is kind of. But Mac Dre was an actual gangster. He went to prison for 6 years for conspiracy to commit bank robbery, where he never even set foot in the bank that he robbed. Yeah, he did 6 years in his prime, and made some great records while he was in prison. He did one that was really great called Back in the Hood. Let me see if I can reach him right here. It's all right. It's a podcast. Nobody cares.
Yeah, you're fine. Go get it. This is interesting stuff.
Okay, here we go.
Wow, those cassettes.
Yeah, cassettes. So I got this one. This is Back in the Hood. So this was recorded over the phone out of Fresno County Jail, and it was all about what he was going to do when he was back in the hood.
That's really great. Cool stuff.
And then after he got out, he put out his best music. He at one point he was putting out I think he put out 3 albums in one day at one point. It was just incredible.
My gosh.
Yeah, just an unbelievably talented guy who is like your favorite rapper's favorite rapper type of thing, where he was never made it in the mainstream and never made it big. So most people don't know who he is, but anybody who's fans of rap turn him on immediately and is like, oh yeah, this guy's got it.
Yeah, that's wild. I love that he recorded it over the phone. I mean, that's
it's super cool. And imagine how hard that must have been.
I was just saying that. I mean, talk about
like you got a boom box next to the, with the phone so he can hear the beats. And like, how do you record? It's crazy. Like when I was a kid, I was a dirt bike racer. So we always wanted to make our own dirt bike videos. There was these like great dirt bike videos called like Crusty Demons of Dirt and Steel Roosts and all these just really cool videos. So we had, cheap camcorders and stuff like that. So we'd start recording ourselves, and it's just like, what are you going to do with it? You've got the recording. Like, how do I put music? How do I edit it? I didn't know how to use a computer at the time. And, the internet was still so new. It was like, you just didn't really have that technology. And, imagine like I'm 38. So if when I was 8 years old, my parents asked me what I want to do when I grow up, if I would have said, have my own TV show, they'd have told me to get lost. But, here we are with our own TV shows, right?
Exactly. That's the deal now, right? Everybody, it's way past Andy Warhol at this point. Andy Warhol said everybody's going to have 15 minutes. You can have as much time as you want, basically. I mean, maybe you won't be as famous as some other people, but that's the case for everybody.
And it doesn't mean it's not valuable, right? Like, can you imagine? I'm lucky enough that I knew my great grandparents. Like my great grandparents, I think my great grandmother died when I was like 18 or something like that. So I got to know them for a long time.
That's a long time.
So yeah, just so rare, right? For people to meet their great grandparents. And like to imagine like being able to turn on a recording and listen to my great grandparents talk about their lives and what they thought about the world would be like priceless.
Well, exactly. That's one of those kind of things that now we have the ability. Now, only time will tell if it makes its way into the future, to where people will do that. But at the moment, yeah, you can. I mean, that's the idea behind all this, is that you can leave a bit of a legacy of interesting stuff in your wake.
Yeah.
Some more than others. Some more interested than others, but
there's a lot of bad podcasts out there, people. If you're listening to us right now, then you've got good taste, because there's some really, really boring, really bad. But I swear, sometimes I go through these things and I like I'll see clips of people on Twitter and go, okay, like boring. And I'll go and I'll look on YouTube and like, how many people, listen to these people's podcasts? And I'm just blown away by the numbers. Like, I can't listen to this guy for 2 minutes. How could you do 2 hours of this?
It's a mystery, isn't it? So, I mean, I don't know if we knew how to crack that code. I mean, we would crack it.
Yeah.
But I don't either. I'm always amazed at what, an example. I'm gonna. All right, the claws are coming out. You opened the floodgates.
Oh boy!
I happen to be looking at Twitter earlier today, and there's this show, which is a very, very popular show, called Two Bears One Cave, and it's Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura, and they happen to have Matthew McConaughey on their show.
I saw that.
Interesting. Seemed like an interesting fella, and they were talking about Bert Kreischer was talking to Matthew McConaughey about their love of ketchup, and it literally was like, at least in the on the Twitter feed, so it got edited, but it was literally just like the Forrest Gump thing, where the one dude's talk about shrimp and what you can make with shrimp. It was like, I like ketchup on my eggs. I like ketchup on, and they were just going back and forth telling each other what they like ketchup on. And I'm like, am I missing something?
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
This, it's like, what the hell is going on here?
They get these. I'm like, really? Everybody thinks Matthew McConaughey talking about putting ketchup on shit is that interesting?
And see, I don't find anything about Matthew McConaughey to be interesting at all. Like, I don't think there's anything interesting about these actors in any way. Like, you're not real people. You're pretending to be real people.
Well, yeah,
I don't know if he still does it, but like a couple years ago, Matthew McConaughey got an Instagram and he did not know how to use it. It was hilarious.
Sure.
Like, he's doing this like, hey, y'all, as he turns to the camera. And it's like, how many times did you go through that? Like, it just wasn't natural. It was so forced. And everybody just gave him all kinds of hell, deservingly, because it was so bad. And it's just like, you're not a real person. You're a sociopath. Like you pretend to be people for a living. Like to me, I don't like find any reverence in that at all. Like I don't look up to actors. I think they're all psychos. Like I knew it. I had a buddy who wanted to be an actor in Southern California. And I went to an audition with him because he was like, you'd be good at this. Like just because of the way you are. And he didn't get it. So like we went and we did this thing, and I kind of just sat back and watched, and we get back and he go, how do you think I did? And I was like, you didn't get it. And he's like, what do you mean I didn't get it? And he was like, and he was going for like The Real World or something like that. And his deal was like, it's like, oh, I get along with everybody. I'm easygoing and I'm, easy go lucky. It's like, that's not what they want. They wanted you to say that you don't like black people. Like,
right.
If you would have said that, you got it. You're in, right?
Right.
They just didn't get it. And like sitting there in that room, I was like, you guys are all psychos. Like, just go away. And like movies are done. I got a lot of shit after Avatar 2. After Avatar 2 came out, I said, we have hit peak CGI for the next however many years. Movies aren't going to get any better. And everybody's, oh no, the technology is getting cheaper. It's getting easier to make the movies. And it's like, no, dude, nobody is watching the movies. It doesn't matter if the technology is getting cheaper because every movie cost more than the last one, and now nobody's going to watch them. So how are you going to get $2 billion together to make the next, big CGI movie when you can't even sell half of that in the box office? Nobody is going to be, lining up to the movie theaters anymore. That whole thing is done. Like,
I think
you broke the habit. The last time I went to the movie theater, I went and saw 1913, and this was pre-COVID.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That was
a good movie. Yeah.
And it's like, it's this beautiful visual, like noir movie that is just incredible. The entire fucking time they had the exit door light on.
Open. Oh, right.
And I run down there. I'm going to turn this light off. And guess what? No switch. It's on. It's just on.
You can't turn it off.
And it's like if I'm watching a movie in my living room, I don't have the laundry room door open with the light on. It's just distracting. It was cold in there. I get cold because I'm an amputee. And at that point, I was like, you know what? It's more comfortable to watch the movies in my house. My sound is good. My visual is good. I'm never going to the movies again. And I haven't been back since.
I'm 100% with you. COVID knocked it right out of me. Yep. I used to go to the movies quite a bit, but the funny thing, I never seen an Avatar movie. I didn't want to go see the first one. I haven't seen the second one.
The second one was awful.
But COVID kind of knocked me out of the movies because it's like now screens are big enough, right? They're big enough at home to where you get the feel, right? And the sound is good, right? At home, you don't have to have the sound. So the only thing that you're missing is that shared experience. But to be honest with you, I didn't like that part anyway.
Me neither.
I love to go to an empty movie theater.
If I'm going to go to the movies again, if I'm ever going to go to the movies again, it's going to be like, when I lived in San Francisco, we used to go down to the Fillmore and you go to the late night black movies. That's fun. Like, but what you're getting into when you go there. You're going to watch, like, we went and watched Rocky Horror Picture Show at the Fillmore.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So it's like all these black people, watching Rocky. What the fuck is it? And it's just so loud and people are throwing shit and it's a blast. But you know what you're getting into when you go to do that.
Well,
like,
that's an interactive
when you go to the Metreon and pay, all this money. Like, you want to be left alone. I want a freaking recliner. I don't want this plastic seat, It's just,
well, a lot of them have recliners now. I mean, that's the deal.
Yeah, well, they're smarter.
It's not, but still, even with the recliner, it's not the same. We are surpassing it. I keep saying that basically the language is changing now. So people aren't going to talk about movies and television and radio. They're going to talk about streaming and podcast. That's it. Those are the words. And streaming encompasses both television and movies at this point. So it doesn't even matter. There's no differentiation between TV and movies. It's streaming. That's it.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and I'm saying that's all there is. There's no
thing that's been
different.
Like so interesting to me about this recent, development in the election is like the corporate media is acting like podcasts just sprung up out of nowhere and there's something novel.
Yeah. 20 years.
Like, there was this podcast with this guy named Joe Rogan. Let me tell you who he is.
Let me tell you about Joe Rogan.
Let me tell you about this guy, Joe Rogan. Have you ever heard of the UFC or Fear Factor? That was him. It's like
news radio.
It's so funny because like it's not anything new. We've gone back in time, essentially. We've just, it's the spoken word. It's the long form interview. It's just talking to people, like sitting around the campfire and talking. That was entertainment for thousands and thousands of years. And we've just gone back to that.
Yeah, exactly. It stripped it back down. So it doesn't have to be highly produced. It can be, I mean, we've got some things on the screen, but it's not super overly produced or anything. But
the dog barks, the dog barks.
Right. If you need to reach over and get your cassettes, you do it.
Yeah, because it's fun, right? Like you get to see something cool. If you were on corporate news and I was interviewing with corporate news and I go, oh, I got this cool thing over here. It's like, no, you've got 20 seconds left in your pit. Right. Like get to it, get your point out, and then let this guy scream at you for another 30 seconds.
Well, that's the other thing is it used to be, and this is one of those words that you're going to hear into the future, I think. So scarcity. Used to be media was scarce because there was only so many outlets. There's only so much time in each outlet, and so media became scarce. But now there's no scarcity of media.
It's the exact opposite.
There's exactly. Well, exactly. But essentially, with scarcity comes value, and without scarcity, then the value is different, right? So then. So now we're at a point where we've got so much media that there's no scarcity of it. And I think that's what's going to happen with a lot of things, is the scarcity is going to, go away because some of it's false scarcity, right? So diamonds, for instance, there's lots of diamonds in the world, but they keep the market so that it seems that they're scarce.
Yeah.
So that people will pay more money. Same thing with gold, same thing with some other stuff. But they control those markets. Well, the media market is now out of control. So there's no scarcity anymore. If you want to you can put up a whole show that's nothing but, whatever you want, anytime you want. So there's no scarcity in media anymore. So then the value of it is different because of that. So, but we'll hear about scarcity going into the future here. The funny thing is, there, everybody talks about the scarcity of oil, but actually, oil's not very scarce either.
No,
it's
and they don't even know how much natural gas we have.
Yeah,
they don't even know. They're like, we think we have 300 years left, but they don't know. Like they've been talking about peak oil for 30 years.
30 years. Yeah.
50 years.
Oh yeah.
I mean, geez, exactly. They've been talking about it since the 70s.
Since the 70s, right? That's when we had the bad gas lines and all that kind of stuff back in the 70s.
That was after it was peak oil.
Was shortly after gas was like 23 cents a gallon, and then all.
My awakening started with peak oil. I watched this documentary called Collapse by a guy named Michael Rupert. And he was like money supply, oil supply, CIA was kind of his thing. And it was just this interesting documentary. And I went and like searched him out on YouTube. And I was like, oh, hey, here's a 3-hour interview with a guy named Joe Rogan who was on Fear Factor. Like maybe I can check that out. Yeah. The rest is history. Peak oil.
Yeah. I think people don't know that actually at the end of September was 20 years of podcasting.
Oh wow!
Yeah, man,
that's
2004,
crazy.
September 2004.
So which podcast are they marking down? Or is that the Daily Source Code? Are they giving credit to Adam Curry, or are they still trying to throw him under the rug?
Well, I don't know if they're marking it with one, because the hilarious thing is I was there with Adam Curry when he was doing the Daily Source Code.
Oh, really?
That's how I know. So,
oh, wow.
I mean, I wasn't personally there. I was listening to Adam Curry and was doing a show before the term podcasting came out. And I wrote Adam Curry and talked, said, what's this podcasting thing? And he's like, well, here, it's the RSS enclosure. And he talked about it in the Daily Source Code. Now, and so the first episode that was considered a podcast for Static Radio was in September of 2004.
Wow.
Yeah, we actually we've been recording since 1999.
Man, you've
weekly.
got some serious broadcasting. Goddamn, man. I'm like a year in. I suck.
No. I mean, it's not like that. What I'm saying is that I think the interesting thing is that it takes this long for these kind of things to to take hold, right? People don't realize that there's so many technologies that, didn't like get traction until well into their life, right? So I would say, so when I talk about podcasting, this is the third wave of podcasting. So 2004 was when the term was invented, and Curry didn't even invent the term. A journalist did. And I can't remember his name, but he invented the term podcasting, and then Curry's like, that's a great name. Let me talk about that. And then, but Curry and Dave Weiner were the ones who introduced RSS enclosure. Specifically, Dave Weiner. Curry was the Steve Jobs, and Dave Weiner was the Wozniak, right? So he did all the work, and so then that became into the lexicon, right? Podcasting. And then in 2011 was another big surge of podcasts. And then the third one here is 2020. So because of COVID, a lot of people were interested in it and had some time. And so they started making podcasts, and that's where everything came out. Rogan's only been around since 2009.
Yeah. I was thinking 12, but 9 sounds right.
Yeah. And so, but to me, if we want to get into this conversation, so Rogan was the easy choice, right? If you think in terms of conspiracies, which when you and I talk, we seem to hit upon this.
Oh yeah,
it is because he was a known quantity, right? So he did news radio. He's a comedian. He did Fear Factor, right? He did the UFC fighting and so forth, and so everybody points to him as like the main guy. Plus he gets paid, a shit ton of money to do this. And he is interesting. No, there's no doubt about that. He has an interesting show, but he is for anyone can say whatever they want, but he is the establishment's choice because he was part of the establishment.
Yeah.
And same thing, like Bill Maher does a lot of stuff now. And they're all kind of anti-establishment, but they're really establishment. And I can tell you people who were there whenever the term was coined, and they're nowhere in any of this stuff. And some people are still doing it, but they're not. And Curry himself was not picked up, even though he was kind of established when he was on MTV, and he was a DJ from when he was a teenager. He DJ'd over in Amsterdam or wherever he was from over there, and that's how he got progressed in media to go to MTV and everything. But it's just a fascinating thing. But now, just like any kind of conspiracy, somebody has to control the message. And so now all of a sudden, conglomerate media wants to control the message. And so now they're placing all these people. That's where the money's coming from, because some of these shows are just god awful.
Yeah.
And they're A-list people,
Yeah. And it's not just coming from like entertainment area too. So like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Sean Ryan podcast. Oh boy.
I've heard the name, but I never listened to it. So
Sean Ryan is an ex-Navy SEAL, ex-CIA.
Oh, right. We talked about this on your show.
Well, since your audience hasn't heard it, I'll make it quick. This guy has a podcast. He can't put 10 words together. He's not a talker. He's a listener, which you can get away with while you're interviewing people. But the guy's just not a talker. And now all of a sudden he's on Joe Rogan talking about all the wars that we need to go fight. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. So, and I've been talking also about this middle management takeover. I think that within our institutions right now, there are a lot of warring factions. I think that you've got middle management guys who are, my age, into their 40s, late 40s, early 50s, that time. And then you've got the upper, level, which guys are in their late 50s, early 60s, into 70s, right?
Right.
And I think that there is a lot of friction between these two type of groups. And if I look at somebody like Sean Ryan, I do not think for a second that guy's being ran from the top. I think he's being ran from one of his buddies from the SEALs who's in the CIA and his middle level management. And I think we're seeing that populate all across media. And I think that these guys are going to be the ones going, hey, look, you want to reform the CIA, right? We're the good guys. Look, I've got a podcast. Look at how great I am. Put me in charge. I think that's a lot of what's going on with
Could
this.
Be, yeah, jockeying. Yeah, jockeying for position.
Jocko Willing, same type of thing, you know? These are known commodities. These are known people. We can give them the right message and get them on the right shows to deliver that message.
Yeah. Oh, you're probably right. Yeah. Because everybody, the number one thing that government wants to do on any topic that it has interest in is control the message. And that's why words change. So if you think about over time, if you think, well, my example is UFO and UAP. No one said UAP until 2017. Everybody said UFO. And then all of a sudden the government, well, we released some videos, but we're calling them unidentified aerial phenomenon. And it's like, no one's ever even heard of that. And the reason is because they want to control the message. So they change the terminology. And it happens time and time again. You can think of other examples that aren't quite so, fringe. Where people do that. And the government does that. They step in, they start changing words. It's like, it's not cultural competency, it's diversity. And so, it's not global warming, it's climate change. Yeah. All of this is just controlling the message, because once they can control those words, then their message floats to the top, because they'll be using these keywords that get out there, and people, oh, well, we have to, pay attention to that because that's important. The government's talking about it.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of a wacky kind of thing. And so as podcasting's gone through time here, it only makes sense because they controlled radio, right? They controlled it through the FCC.
Yep.
Well, because it's the public airwaves, right? And so you can't have, every Tom, Dick, and Harry get on the public airwaves. So you had rules. Well, there's no rules on the internet. And so how are we going to make rules? Well, first we got to control the area, and then we'll slowly work to make rules. Because, if they do it overnight, then everybody gets upset and calls it fascist state and what have you. So you have to do it slowly. And so they finally said, oh, wait, this is get out of control. We're going to step in and start, turning this boat around, because it's not doing what we want. Yeah. And, it fascinates me because it's repeated itself historically over and over and over again. But the problem is, everybody gets old and dies. And so the government, it doesn't age. I mean, more new people go into offices and so forth, but they can, have a plan that runs for 100 years. The fact that there's World War II things that are still top secret tells you that the government has no time limit.
Yeah. I mean, how long did they want to keep the COVID stuff secret? 200 years or something like that?
Right. Yeah.
Like who comes up with that number? Like, how does that work? Like, nobody's going to be alive. And a lot of times their excuses, they don't want to, declassify things because people are still alive. It's like, that's not even like, you want it to be so far gone that it's ancient history by that point. The UAP thing is interesting. I've dug into these whistleblowers pretty good. There's a great series about them on, I guess it's the New York Post, a guy named Stephen Greenstreet and Nick Pope.
Oh yeah.
So these guys, they did a great job, and it is the New York Post. So you have to take that with a grain of salt, but they kind of really dug into these guys, and their explanation for UAP was that UFO is a machine. A UFO is a flying device, a machine. UAP encompasses anything and everything that could be going on at Skinwalker Ranch.
Gotcha.
And that's what this is really all about, is Skinwalker Ranch. And all of these government hearings on UFOs and UAPs should not be about any of that. What they should really be looking into is why they paid what's his name, the rich guy who owns Skinwalker. Why did they
Bigelow.
pay him? Yeah, why did they pay Bigelow $15 million to investigate his own property? That should be what's really going on here. These what's his name? Luis Elizondo. I was head of ATIP. ATIP was not a real agency. It was literally UFO Club with him and a couple other guys in the Pentagon. There was nothing, it's not even a real department. It was just some made up thing. You've got James Lukatsky, who's a weirdo, All of these guys are Mormons, and it all ties together with like the new guy who owns Skinwalker Ranch is a Mormon. Bigelow was a Mormon. Harry Reid, the guy that gave Bigelow the money, was a Mormon. And essentially, these guys are trying to prove that like the Mormon religion is real, and they're going to do that.
Really?
Skinwalker Ranch.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. You should watch it. It's so much weird shit. So like when Bigelow bought the property, he brought a bunch of people out there to find stuff, find anything. And they didn't find shit. And so what happened was Bigelow said, well, look, how about if you find something, I'll give you a bonus. Well, wouldn't you know it? They started finding shit all over the place, right?
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, some of the stuff that they show as evidence is ridiculous. It's like a little light moving through the the dust or something. It's like, come on, man. Like one of the guys who works on the show is actually a spook.
Oh, yeah. They have a bunch of CIA people on that show.
Unbelievable. Like the wildest guy on the show. Let's run over there. I don't remember his name, but he's like the wild card of the show. And the guy's a fucking Fed.
Well, it makes sense. So that's interesting because I can't remember when it was. It's been a couple of years now. But something, maybe it was even in 2017. I can't remember how long ago it's been, to be honest with you. But I told my wife, that all this UFO stuff was coming out, and I said, well, I think they're gearing up because people aren't afraid of the Russians anymore. That now they're going to make aliens be our enemy.
Yeah.
Because they always have to have an enemy, because you can't guide people without having a common cause. And so generally the common cause is, let's go to the moon. Let's, the communism, the Nazis. And so the new common cause was going to be aliens. And so they're just getting everybody geared up to be, afraid of the aliens. And then they'll, and then it just becomes another point of control, because of course I don't want the aliens to take over. It's that whole question. How often do you beat your wife? And you're like, it's like, how do you answer it? I don't beat my wife. Oh,
what?
Really?
What kind of question is that?
The leading question. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's one of those weird things. So I'm waiting for, in a few years for the aliens to be the enemy. They're gonna have something happen, and it's gonna be attributed to aliens, and then they're gonna be the bad guys that we can all rally around. Because we have to have a rallying point.
Luckily, I think that people are so disillusioned with the corporate press right now that I think that there's a decent amount of the population who's just going to go, I don't buy it. I don't buy anything you're selling me at this point. If you're telling me it's aliens, then I think it's a Nazi, or, maybe it's Jews. I don't know. But like, if you say aliens, we're going to say bullshit, because we don't believe you anymore. And like, in order for the corporate press to survive, something has to happen. There has to be some sort of change event to draw people back in, right?
Well, what do you think? This is what we're talking about, right? They're bringing up all these people who are anti-establishment, and they become the news. Joe Rogan becomes the news, right? Think the person you mentioned. I'm blanking on his name now, but Sean. What'd you say?
Sean Ryan.
Sean Ryan. Sean Ryan's the news.
Yeah.
He's not established. So in essence, they're submarining their own creation with the new creation.
Yeah.
And it takes a while.
Minions in place for their next move.
They'll move up, and then that'll be the thing. I mean, every time they have, if you're planning ahead, right? So, they held on to the horse and buggy as long as they could, but then everybody moved into cars, and they're holding on to cars as long as they can, but we'll move into something else. And same thing, right? When radio was king, don't go to movies were king. They didn't want radio. Then they want television. And so we're it's progressing just like it has. But the problem is that we only have, you're lucky if you're a person that can have a 50-year memory through your lifetime, because when you're young, you don't have the critical skills, and then when you get old, you lose the critical skills. So you only got 50 good years in the middle where you might be able to to have those critical skills, from when you're 20 to 70. And then after you hit 70, then you start getting more cognitive decline, and you don't have it anymore. And so, but the government doesn't have that. They don't have that decline. And so therefore it's an endless game, I think. Unfortunately, I don't want to get into other territory, but I do believe that all this stuff is happening. I mean, and stuff comes out, it's proven. I was just listening to something that's so bizarre, but after World War II, the United States government socked a bunch of money into modern art and pushing modern artists. And that's why Jackson Pollock is so revered, is because the U.S. government funded, basically paid people to say it was great. And it's documented. And the reason they did that was because of so much art had gotten destroyed and lost and stolen and all this stuff, that they wanted to turn the art market around and get it away from what had happened in World War II. And so the Jackson Pollock and all these guys came up, they were young in the 40s and came up through the 50s and so forth. And they totally turned the art market into in that direction. And it was all financed by the United States government. And
now it's a huge money laundering. Why? It's a huge money laundering scheme. That's probably why.
Exactly. Right? Well, it could be. I don't know.
Creating their own, exit ramp from So the government, one thing they do very well is they hold assets and leave us, holding fiat dollars, right? So
right.
They have to have off ramps from their own tyranny, because they can't keep their money in fiat. Otherwise, they're going to get destroyed like the rest of us. So they have to, bring in these different avenues of storage, like gold, like, things that they can control, right?
Right. Markets, Markets.
Is, Bitcoin hit 90,000. It's interesting, right? Like, is it controllable? Mm-hmm. I've got a buddy who thinks that because of all these, BlackRock and the ETFs, that it's controllable now. I'm not really convinced of that. I think that we're going to have a fight to the death for the last 1% here in the next, 100 years. And as long as normal people keep holding, there's not much the big institutions can do about it.
I don't like, it's like crypto came on strong and everything. And so we still got crypto but is that controllable? And they're trying to control that now. So
yeah, they're trying.
You have to, if you have a lot of cryptocurrency, technically you're supposed to pay taxes on that. Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's unrealized. I mean, that was like one of the worst, policies that Kamala had, was taxing unrealized gains. It's just like, if you had to tax unrealized gain and pay those taxes, you couldn't hold anything. You would have to sell. Like, how are you going to pay for the house, unrealized gains on the house if you don't have the money? You got to sell the house to pay the unrealized gains. It makes no sense.
It does make some sense. Well, it's because the whole idea is that it's just like gambling, right? There's no winners. They eke out a few winners, right? To entice people to keep gambling. It's like the lottery, right? You play the lottery because one guy won something or one lady won something out of the millions of people who put into it. And that's the game. And so, for every Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, there's millions of people with nothing. And that's the whole game right there. It's just gambling. Because you don't have to have a lot of winners to entice people to gamble, and sometimes you don't have to have any winners.
No, it's
because
addictive,
it's addictive. Exactly, people love to do it, and so it's. I've always I watched. This doesn't make any sense at all, but I watched some show. Whitechapel, I think was the name of the show, right? And I hadn't known this, and I got a little piece of history out of it. And in it, the main character, he was a sea captain who worked on a whaling boat, and now he was in Whitechapel, and it's kind of an eerie kind of show. But anyway, he ended up getting this lumber yard, and he went to the lumber yard. All these guys were working there, and it changed ownership because of something in the show. I can't remember all the details, but anyway, he goes, I'm going to run this lumber yard like we run a whaling vessel, which is if the more money we make, the more money you make. So everybody gets a share, right? So actually, the Deadliest Catch talks about shares, right?
Mhm.
So you're on the boat and you work, and everybody gets a share, and your share is in accordance to your kind of station. And it's a very
Value.
old way of thinking, right? It's really very much a kind of caste type system.
Mhm.
But the deal is, when the boat strikes it rich, or the lumberyard strikes it rich, you strike it rich. Whereas now everything is tied to time, right? So you get
Yeah.
paid an hourly wage, and these people are making, a tremendous amount of money. And well, we can up your hourly wage, but see, the problem is, again, hourly time is a scarcity. And to me, it seems, and this is going to sound communist or what, everybody gets on me when I talk like this, but that share thing makes a lot more sense. But the hard part of the share thing is when they lose money, you lose money.
Yeah.
Right. You don't make as much money. But the realities, and everybody's like, well, I don't want to lose money. But the realities are, if they lose money, you're going to lose your job anyway.
Yeah.
They're not going to keep you on paying you your hourly wage because they're not making any money.
Yeah.
And so it seems like that, and this is like a really old school kind of, old school is in like 1800s way of doing things, that we've lost, and people are stuck in these positions that just seem to be increasing the wealth of the company, the wealth of the country, the wealth of the CEO, but not necessarily the wealth of the individual. And I remember watching this show. Has nothing to do with what I just talked about. And this is just a very small part of the show. And I'm like, I wonder why people don't, push for that, because, some years are going to be better than others. Like if you're a farmer, right? Some years are better than others, and, some years are worse, but overall chances are, in the economy, if everybody wants to keep it going, it'll average out to your advantage. And so it seems like they've taken that advantage away.
I think that would work out a lot better than unions. Unions commie shit. A lot of times, for some businesses, your union's going to work out good because you work for a monopoly. But in other circumstances, it's not that cut and dry. I was really lucky as a kid. I got my first job when I was like 12 years old. I started working for a contractor, and he paid me what I was worth. He did not pay me by the hour. Good. He said, if you work hard and you learn and you do your job, you're going to make good money at the end of the week. But if you're slacking, if you're late, if you're taking too long on lunch, if I see you picking daisies, you're not going to make shit this week. And every day we'd walk in and he'd go, all right, what are we doing today? And I go, I don't know, because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm 12 years old, right? And he said, okay, what we're doing is we're going to do this and this and this, and we're doing that because A, B, and C. So by the end, I'm working for him all summer, and by the end, he's like, all right, what are we doing today? We're going to go and tear out this wall. All right. Why are we doing that today? Because blah, 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 blah. At the end of the week, here's $250. Holy cow. I only made 100 last week. What did I do? He's like, you learned something. So you're adding value because now you know something and I can get some value out of that knowledge. Right. And it was a great way to learn, Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I actually started the first job I actually really had was I was kind of self-employed. I grew up in Northern California, so we had mistletoe everywhere. We had oak trees everywhere, and we go and blast it out of the tree with a shotgun, and I tie it up with some ribbon and put a candy cane on it, and I go stand out in front of Ray's food place, and I'd sell it. And I started selling them for, hey, mistletoe bundle, $5. Keep walking, $4, $3, $2. Finally, I said, you know what? Let's get crazy. And I started going, hey, you want to buy some mistletoe? It's only $0.25. And wouldn't you know it, people started buying 6 and 8 of them.
Oh, there you go.
And it taught me value. It taught me how to, how do you add value to people's lives? You give them something. It's not just, you're not going to just tie it up and make it look crap. Like you're going to do a good job. You add the candy cane. It only costs, a couple of cents when you buy them. And it just taught me things that like kids don't learn today. I have a 12-year-old stepbrother who is legitimately 5 years younger than I was when I was 12. He's a little kid still, where I was like a young adult at 12. He's still a very little kid. And I don't think that is good for our society.
No, I think you're right. I worked very young as well, and I think the interesting thing is that we it's I think people are like, well, I want to save them the agony of having to work young, but part of that is just learning, to navigate things, right?
Learning to speak to adults.
Yeah, and you had that experience where the guys like, rewarded you for being for moving things forward and for essentially taking the lead on things, because it's like he knows that you're more valuable if he doesn't have to come and tell you what to do all the time.
Yeah.
And then you'll just take it on.
I was able to take it into my adult life. So when I started doing line work, and I'm a fish out of water, I don't know exactly what I'm doing. Everything has a different name in North Dakota than it does in the school that I went to. And when I started working with this lineman, we'd show up and I'd say, hey, this is what we're doing today. And I just started doing it with him, right? Like I didn't ask him to do it. I just started doing it. This is what we're doing today. This is why. And sometimes I get it right and sometimes I wouldn't. And, I remember one time he's like, what are we doing today? And I told him, this is what we're going to do. How would you do that? All right, I would do this and this and that. And he goes, all right, well, what if instead of setting a new pole right there, why don't we top that tree? And then we'll throw some, blocks on that tree and we'll use that tree. And it's like, I never thought about that. That's a good idea.
Can we do that?
Yeah. And it opens up your mind to a different way of thinking, but you have to start out like with the eagerness to learn. Like if you're just there collecting the paycheck, if you're just there because somebody else wants you to be there, you're never going to be good at that job, right? Like you're just going to be there taking up space. But if you work hard, like one of the best things I heard Trump say during this election is it was a throwaway clip. He was talking about voting and he was like, hey, if you're depressed, you know what the cure for depression is? Hard work. Work your ass off and you won't have time to be depressed. And I was like, man, that's a great, way to think about it, because when you're busy, when you're working your ass off, you don't have time to feel sorry for yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you're busy. That's the thing. Yeah. I think that helps people, because that's, kind of the purpose is that if you can be busy on things that you want to do, like we're doing, rather than what other people want to do, that's even better. But yes, you have to keep yourself busy. You can't just kind of hang out and do nothing. I mean, you can, but I think that typically leads you down other paths that aren't necessarily, productive for your person. Not that it's not fun to do stuff, but eventually you're going to run into a dead end on that note there. It'll run awry, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
But so let's loop back and talk about Too Hard for the Radio. So we veered way off for a little while there, but
it's all right. We did the weave. We weaved back.
So you said so you gave us the kind of the name, where that came from and so forth. What was your motivation? You're just like, hey, I think I want to do this, or was there a specific purpose that you were trying to accomplish?
A little bit of both. Like the main reason was probably just because I've been sitting in my house for 10 years, bored out of my mind. Like I've been hurt, and it was like, watching politics, watching what's going on in the news, and like having nobody around to complain about it too. I would just assault my family over the phone or in person, and just, all this and that. And they don't want to hear it. They don't fucking care. Like I care. They don't fucking care. So, and it was also like, what am I going to do with my life now that, everything has changed? Like I went from being an outdoor physical activity type of guy to like being more of an inside cat type of deal. And outside dog to inside cat. And it was, what am I good at? I bartended for 10 years. I was really good at doing that. And to me, this is really just an extension of bartending. Like bartending, you're putting on a show. You kind of have your same points that you go back to. You've got your same little jokes. And this just allows you to expand on it a little bit. But there's not much difference between me talking to you like this or me like pouring drinks for you and talking to you. Like it's kind of the same dynamic. And I knew it was something I could be good at. So I kind of reached out to some other podcasters to like go on their show and just see how I did, and I went on Sam Tripoli's tinfoil hat and did very well, got a good response, and it's like, all right, cool. I'll do it. And spent the money, went down some rabbit holes, and it took a long time to get it going finally, but we're rocking and rolling now.
So part of this is because you're the one-armed madman. So you lost your hand and part of your arm, I guess, at one time, and that kind of led to this path for you.
Yeah. So I've always been an Ozzy Osbourne fan, and he did. Before I started the podcast, I did a blog. I did like a Substack is where I started.
Okay,
out.
Gotcha.
And I called it Diary of a One-Armed Madman, kind of off of the Ozzy.
Right.
So I kind of just went with that, and that kind of just stuck.
Yeah. And so I guess with if you don't want to talk about this, it's perfectly fine. But
no, I'm open to anything.
With losing your hand and so forth.
Yeah.
I mean, that obviously changed your life kind of dramatically, fairly quickly.
Yeah.
I would have guessed.
Yeah, very quickly. I remember climbing up the pole. I looked over at my buddy, because everything in line work is a race. You're always trying to get it done fastest. So I look over to him, see what kind of progress he's making. And then I wake up hanging from the pole, looking at the sky, and don't remember what happened in between there. It could have all been over with, you don't even know that it happens. Like, we don't know what happens after we're gone. If nothing happens, then I just died and didn't even know it. Right.
You're like, hey, wait, it's all sky here. We just a sky place.
So no, it was rough. I did 4 months in the burn unit at University of Utah's burn center. I should have died. They called it a catastrophic unsurvivable injury. But since I'm a psycho and I grew up racing dirt bikes, when I got hurt, like, I never thought for a second that I was going to die. I never thought for a second that I was going to lose my hand. It was just get me off the pole, get me to the ambulance, get me to the hospital, and they'll fix me up just like they always have. Like, I never, I didn't think I remember when I knew that it was going to be bad. Like, I was having surgeries a lot. So when they brought me in, they did fasciotomies. I don't know if you can see, but they like totally cut you open, and they tried doing cadaver skin over me first. So I had a bunch of different colored skin on me, which is kind of fun. And, I texted my black buddy. I was like, I took a picture of, like, I had somebody put their wallet in my hand, and I was like, I had black skin on my arm, and I was like, dude, I woke up and my doctor's wallet was in my hand this morning. What is going on? That was kind of fun. Mess with my buddies. But, I was having surgeries like every couple of days. They would have to go in and do debridement, and then they'd go back to wound vacs, more surgery. And finally, like, I was playing video games with both hands for the first, month or so that I was in there. And finally the burn doctor came in one day, and he was like, your left arm is beyond what I can do. And we're going to have to bring in a plastic surgeon. And that was when I knew that it was fucked. I was like, oh shit, like, this is good.
So they really, really tried to save it for you.
Oh, they tried. And I also got lucky because, my ex-wife we were not married at the time, so she was not my go-to contact. So they went to my mother first, and they called my mother to ask if they could amputate both my arms. She was already on a plane at the time, so she didn't get the call. So they didn't amputate either of them. So,
okay.
So
that worked
I don't know
out.
how she would have answered that question. We don't know what the doctors would have said. If they say he's going to die if we don't take them both, they probably take them both. Right. So I did get lucky in a sense, but it's brutal. Wow, it's a fucking brutal. It's a brutal injury. Burns are the burn unit's the worst place in the world to be in.
Right.
There's this little girl in there that God, it's hard to even talk about, but she like had boiling water spill down her head. And she was just mangled. She was mangled. Yeah. And like, you could hear her in physical therapy every day because she was growing faster than the burn, like, scarring would allow. So they were having to stretch her, and it was ripping her scarring open. And
that's horrible.
There was a guy,
because your skin doesn't it's not doing what it normally does.
Yeah, so it doesn't flex. It just tightens up on you. So there was a guy in the room next to me who was my age. He was in a trucking accident, and his wife was same age as my ex-wife. So they were kind of hanging out in the burn unit, and me and him BS'd a couple of times. I think we watched a football game or two. And then one night he just died. he got a blood clot and he died. And that was it. And like it. he wasn't even in as bad a shape as I was. And
yeah, but it changes your physiology.
Yeah.
Whenever you if they have to amputate, then you mentioned earlier, you said I'm always cold because I'm an amputee, right?
Yeah.
So it totally changed your body's. It's kind of like, you know, having a machine. It's meant to run one way, and when you start taking parts off of it and everything, it doesn't run the same way.
Yeah, you can see the atrophy.
That's where you. Yeah,
like,
and that's what you know. That's what happens.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
One's twice the size of the other.
Yeah.
It's just, and there's nothing you can really do about it because there's not much you can do for like a bicep in this situation. Like it's hard to curl with a prosthetic on, and you know, prosthetics aren't great either. I just had to go and have prosthetic work done. It's just, they suck, you know, because it's the bad reality of it. Like the hooks work okay, but the interface is bad. Like, it's uncomfortable. I always laugh when I hear Joe Rogan talk about, people are going to be cutting their arms and legs off for prosthetics. It's like, no, like we are so funny that it's not even funny because nobody wants metal sticking into their arm or their leg. And it's not, plastic is not comfortable. It's just not. Like on my arm, my hand, like it's just skin on plastic, right? And then on my hook, I have this neoprene thing that goes over. So on my hook, like so imagine this in like neoprene rubber. So there's no you can't get rid of the sweat. So the things just fill up with sweat immediately. In the wintertime, you're cold as hell because there's no,
you're sweating and it's getting cold.
It's just a nightmare. It's a nightmare. Yeah. I've been snowboarding a couple times and man, you do a couple runs and that hook turns into an icicle and I'm freezing. I'm not having fun. It sucks, you know? And
yeah,
it's just one of those things where you have to adjust and you have to change and you have to find new things that can, you know, keep you happy or keep you involved, keep you interested in things. Like I never got into politics or like I'm a libertarian now. I've read some libertarian, you know, theory type of stuff. And like, that's a big part of my life now. Whereas before I didn't pay attention to anything. I didn't really care about what was going on in the world around me. I didn't think that, you know, anybody within the corporate press or the governing structure actually represented me or what I believe in. And I just didn't have any interest in it. But now, you know, you got to find things that I've read. Like, I think I've read 300 sci-fi books since I've been hurt. Like,
wow.
Yeah.
That's something.
Like, just Audible on tape every night. I love it. It's great. I love listening to that stuff. It's so fun to like think about, you know, aliens and space opera types. It's just, it's fun for me to put myself in those positions and think about, you know, what's actually going on out there and what the future is going to look like. Like I'm not, you know, everybody's all fired up on AI right now, but I've read so many freaking books with advanced AI in it. And it's just, that's not what we're looking at. Like ChatGPT is closer to my predictive keyboard than Skynet by leaps and bounds.
Right. It's not, I mean, maybe there's something beyond the veil that we aren't getting to see yet, but you're right. Yeah. It's not anything special yet. It's tricks, right? I
think it's going to be a bubble. I think that they've put themselves in positions where they are essentially de-energizing the company or the country, same thing.
Right.
But they're taking away all of our energy, yet they want these massive data centers and, you know, power stations for AI that we don't even know if it's going to work or not. The next iterations of these things is going to cost so much energy to train that it's not even funny. Like, that's why we've seen a little bit of movement on nuclear energy in the past couple months, because these people aren't dumb. They know that they're not going to be building these next generation AIs off of windmills.
Right. Because it takes a lot of electricity to run all this stuff. And we need to figure it out. I mean, whatever it is, whatever the solution, we're not there yet. And I think, you know, part of the solution is probably diversification, right? So if you live in a sunny climate, then solar, you know, can be useful. But if you live in a not sunny climate, then it's not useful.
But give me roofing tiles. Don't give me these ridiculous solar banks that are going to destroy my roof and lose value on my home and wear out like crazy. Like, give me something that works well. Like, I don't want any of that bullshit. Give me a roof tile. I know you can do it. Stop fucking around and do it.
Right. Oh no, like, it's easily possible at this point. Well, and they talk about, I don't know if you've seen the they have it so it's for windows. So the windows, so then if they can do it on the window, they can do it on the siding. So then literally your whole house can be a
battery.
Taking the solar energy, and you can produce a lot more than you need for your house potentially. The funny thing is, and I don't know, people, you know, when they talk in the news, they don't really talk in numbers, right? So your house, so talk about electric cars and stuff like that, right? Electric car to go anywhere, you could run your house for a week on a Tesla battery's worth of electricity, but it only runs that car for about 250 miles. And so I think nobody really talks about that too much, in the sense that we do use a lot of electricity in our house, but with a lot of improvements over the years, it's not as much as it used to be. And now that's not including, you know, heating and cooling. That's where your big money comes in, right?
Yeah.
But even with that, you're still not talking about as much as it takes to drive down the road, because you're moving, you know, that heavy object and stopping and starting it and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the house doesn't move anywhere, right? So we all have LED bulbs, you know.
They're forced on us. This is not the market making decisions, right? It's massive subsidies and tax breaks. Like, if we were running an actual free market where you had to compete for, you know, resources and make a good product, they would just all say, you know what, we're going to wait until we figure out solid state batteries. Like, if you figure those out, it's going to change everything. And we're not going to force this ridiculous car down your throat for 5 or 10 years. Like, let's just do the research. We'll do the science, and we'll make a better car down the line. Because like, a solid state battery changes a whole lot, you know. Everything changes with a solid state battery. And it's not like they're so far away that we have to have this electric car now. It's like, no, it's like 10, 15 years. Like, Toyota's going to have these things figured out in 10, 15 years.
Yeah. And in that 10 or 15 years, the potential is that they could coat the car with something that can take in the sun's rays and generate electricity. Not that you can necessarily not have to charge it, but if you go the average amount of miles, which is something like 30 some miles in a day, the potential is there that you won't have to charge it, because it can generate on the surface area. But
we should just be doing the hybrid thing. I mean, if we just put a small gas engine in there, and people freak out about like oil and gas engines and stuff like that. These engines are so freaking badass. They're so tight. All the tolerances are so tight. They're so efficient that they're not causing any pollution for the most part. Like, here in Idaho, we got rid of smog. They were like, all of our vehicles are brand new on the road for the most part, and they're not doing anything. So like, there's this new electric dirt bike company that came out. And one of their things is like, good for the environment. And everybody that owns one of these bikes shows up to the track with a small gas engine generator in that. And it's like, that generator is it pollutes so much more than the dirt bike. It's not even close, because these dirt bikes are high tolerance engines, and this is a small gas engine that nobody gives a shit about.
Right.
Those pollute like crazy. The other one is burning every like ounce of fuel that they possibly can to get as much power out of it as possible. Like, I remember Top Gear. What's the guy? Jeremy Clarkson. He did a video years ago where he was driving this Porsche, and he was like, this thing burns so clean that the emissions coming out of the tailpipe are cleaner than the surrounding air in Los Angeles.
Oh, I believe.
It's an air filter.
That. Yeah,
the thing's an air filter.
True. Yeah. Well, the funny thing was, you know, during COVID, smog went away in Los Angeles, but but
well, you know, in Los Angeles, like we should be running 2-stroke engines on dirt bikes still. The entire problem, like with 2-stroke engines, is a bunch of idiots in the 70s looked up and said, "Oh, what's all this smog doing here? It must be coming from these dirt bikes. They have a little puff of smoke out of the exhaust. Right. It's not coming from my Cadillac."
The I found an interesting thing about the rockets. They're launching SpaceX, and
So cool.
they're launching the rockets, right? And they said, one rocket, and I'm gonna not give you a good statistic on this, but I looked it up at the time I was thinking about it when I was looking at it. So one rocket is like 30. I'm just making up a number here. 30,000 or no 300,000 diesel trucks. Right. So it's the same amount of pollution that 300,000 diesel trucks put out in a year as one rocket launch.
Wow.
Right. And then I go, and I did a Google and I said, how many diesel trucks are running on the roads in the country? It wasn't even the number. There is not as many diesel trucks on the road as one rocket puts out pollution when it launches.
Interesting.
So it just tells you that everybody loves to talk about this, and it's the do as I say, not as I do. They're like, you need to cut down on your pollution, yet we need to do these rockets which pollute more than everything that you're doing.
It's NIMBY, not in my backyard, buddy.
Oh yeah, and I'm like, that is ridiculous. It is so ridiculous that people would even say that. I'm like, yes, rockets we need to do something with rocketry. Wait a minute, figure out how to make these rockets not pollute, because you control the whole damn thing.
Yeah. I mean, we could do a sky hook. We could do launch loops. There's all kinds of different things. Elon Musk owns the Boring Company. All you have to do is make one of those tubes and point it up.
Right. That's right. You can capture all of it. Exactly. You can capture all the exhaust underground.
Yeah.
But
I love this guy. His name's Isaac Arthur. He does a show on YouTube called Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur. And he's got like 50 different methods that we could use to get stuff up off the ground that do not include rockets. It's really interesting.
Well,
sky hooks, launch loops,
they got
orbital rings.
The velocity one. What's that? The sling. Well, it spins around real fast. The centrifuge.
Yeah, I saw that.
Throws it out.
And then,
yeah, they do satellites that way, and so but it's crazy that not that anything we can. I'm always say anything we can do to help the environment is fantastic. We can make these things more efficient. You can always do better, but to go around telling everybody that it's their fault is wrong. It's just like telling your kids, well, we can't have nice things because you exist. If we didn't have you, we'd be going on vacation every year. Yeah. It's like, I think that's probably the wrong approach, folks. You need to say the reason we can't go on vacation is because inflation. I don't want to take another job or something. I don't know, but it's not, you decided to have the kid, so it's really your fault, right? So, but it's just another one of those kind of examples of how twisted the messages get. And that gets us back on track a little bit from our earlier talk about messaging. The message gets so twisted that the average person, there's no way you can track it. I mean, we have all the tools right now to track these kind of things. When somebody makes a statement, you can go, and now the other problem is there's so much bad information, but you can do a cursory look and see if what you see in those results all seem to coalesce into one direction, and hopefully that is the truth is somewhere in the mix. But it's but nobody, we still don't do that, and we carry around computers. People are constantly getting scammed. I don't know how many times if I find something and it's a website, I'm like, is that website legit? And I do a search before I start clicking on anything.
Yeah. Oh, I don't click links in my email anymore. No. It's just not worth it. Most of the time I don't recognize who's, sending it anyways. And a lot of times they're trying to bust you. Oh, we just charged your, antivirus account for $350. I'm like, no, you didn't. I'm not.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But everybody's still so gullible to these things. I'm surprised. I mean, we have all these great tools and everything, and yet we're still,
it's just, things happen so fast. Right? Like if you I'm plugged in to everything. I'm always on Twitter. Every day I'm looking at Twitter. I'm watching podcasts. Like I've got a decent idea of what's going on in the world on a day-to-day basis. If you go out and work in the yard for one day, you're out of the loop. It's like, what are you talking? Somebody will send you something and be like, I don't even understand what that means. They're like, oh, well, you have to know this and this and that before you can understand that joke. And it's like,
right. Yeah.
You know,
it gets
so wild.
Complicated. Yeah. Maybe we need simpler stuff. I don't know. Well,
I don't think I do not see the world getting any less complex anytime soon.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true. And speaking of that, Too Hard for the Radio podcast, there you can see on there the YouTube link. That's Nick right there. He's getting a drink.
Mm-hmm.
We've been going for a little over an hour right now. I think we'll call this one, and we'll come back for another one.
Sounds good.
Another time. So if you want to say any more about your show other than what I put on the screen, here's your chance to have a go at it.
I promise it is a better show than the numbers reflect. If that works, no, but I do. I'm trying to do as many shows a week as I can. I've got 2 co-hosts right now that we record on different days. So I'm getting at least once a week right now. I kind of dropped the ball on interviews a little bit for the past couple months, just because I've been doing a lot and election and all that stuff. So interviews will be coming back this winter. I like to hammer the interviews a little bit better during the winter. In the summer, I like to have some time to go out and work in the yard.
Yeah, go out.
I do promise it's a better show than the numbers reflect.
but as our conversation, the numbers are all rigged.
They are right.
There you go.
I don't trust any of them. I think Twitter's probably the worst of them. They'll show a video, 2 billion views. It's like, no, come on, come on.
Well, with AI, you can have almost as many listens as you'd like.
Yeah.
Till next time, folks. Hold on a second.